Welcome one, welcome all to the first ever annual Henry Loves Music Best Album of the Year Awards, for lack of a better term. This is the first episode of a show where I try to do something I am notoriously bad at: rank albums. I don't know if you've been checking that calendar recently, but there are only 2 Fridays left in the big 2024, which means I only have 2 videos slated for release this year. And before you start quaking in your boots and shaking and crying and wondering what's gonna happen, like you're obviously doing, let me explain. 2024 was a monster year for music. I don't think anybody is disagreeing with that. And there have been so many phenomenal albums, EPs, songs that have released this year that we gotta look back at some of them. And because it's the end of the year, and because I've never done this before, why not start now? I went over to the Promised Land, aka Twitter, and asked my followers which video they'd like to see first, a top 10 albums video or a top 10 songs video. You guys chose albums, so that's what we're doing today. And before you start crying and asking why it's not in one video, it would be too long. Plain and simple. So for this video, I went through every single album that I listened to this year. I put my 10 favorite ones into a list. I'm gonna share that list with you today. A few little disclaimers before we dive into this. 1, I did not listen to every single album this year. So if your favorite album is not on here, it is probably because I didn't listen to it. And that's okay, I'm always looking for new music to listen to, so if your album doesn't show up on this list, leave a comment, let me know what I missed. And 2, most importantly, this is my opinion. You probably will not have the same top 10 as me. In fact, I pretty much guarantee that you will not have the same top 10 as me. And that's completely fine. Great thing about music is that we all interpret it in different ways and we all rank it in different ways. So please don't be afraid to share your top 10 with me in the comment section. Please run up my engagement. But with that being said, I'm gonna try to explain to the best of my abilities why I put each album in the place that it is in. So if you disagree with it and I didn't explain it well enough, sucks to suck, I guess. Without further ado, my name's Henry, I love music. This is where I talk about it. I upload once a week. You should subscribe. Let's get into the music. At number 10, starting off strong, I have Chromacopia by Tyler, the Creator. Now, this may already be a shock to some people because I have 2 Chromacopia videos on this channel. I have a handful of them on my TikTok, and in fact, my most viewed TikTok is a TikTok about Chromacopia. So you would think it'd rank higher here. But like I said in the intro, 2024 was such a monster year for music that there were so many good albums this year. This just had to be in the 10 spot. Tyler, the Creator, has been one of the most consistent artists that I have ever listened to. He's able to keep his sound pretty similar with his weird chord progressions and funky synths, while still being able to experiment enough to keep longtime listeners entertained and bring in a new audience. And I think Chromacopia does exactly that. I think it combines a lot of styles from all of his albums while still experimenting in new ways in order to reinvent the style of Tyler, the Creator, while also keeping it the same Tyler that we know. I'm a huge fan of like every single song on this album. I think the only song that I really haven't gone back to that much is Balloon, and I still like Balloon, but that album is a heater, with songs like Saint Chroma, Like Him, Take Your Mask Off, and these really personal narratives that Tyler's driving throughout the entire album. It's great. It's such a great album. Now, why did I put it in the 10 spot? I don't go back to Chromacopia as much as the other albums on that list, not saying that that makes it bad, but it's just reality. And while I love Chromacopia and everything it accomplished for both Tyler and just the industry in general, I feel very comfortable with putting it at this 10 spot. Anyways, let's continue. At number 9, I have Brat by Charli XCX. If I could give 2024 a color, it would be Brat Green. This album has had such a strong influence on pop culture this past year. It is insane. Charli XCX was very popular prior to this album being released. There's not a doubt about that. But Brat skyrocketed her to a level where she has made herself a staple in the mainstream now. It's able to combine elements of dance, pop, house in such interesting ways that it just scratches my brain so You get what I'm trying to say. With Brat, Charli XCX managed to bring crazy experimental club music to the masses in a way that I don't think anybody ever expected. You have songs like 360, Sympathy is a Knife, Von Dutch, 365. Songs that no matter what kind of slump you're in can instantly change your mood for the better. Also, something I want to point out recently, I've seen so many TikToks of people like hating on people that like Brat, especially recently because it's too mainstream now, I guess. Especially, my favorite TikTok trend right now is the one where it's like, would you like to share AirPods? And it's, they have pictures of like Brat, like Tyler the Creator and like a couple other mainstream albums. And then the next slide is like, no thanks, I'm good. And the first thing you see is like Shaboozey. Personally, I don't get the Brat shade. I think this is an incredible album. And I think the reason it's at the 9 spot for me is, again, I don't go back to it as much as these other albums that I'm gonna talk about. My music taste, especially recently, like as of this year, has become a lot more slow, I guess. But I do love those club classics, so Brat gets a 9. And that's not even including the Brat remixes. Those were cool too. Moving on, at number 8, we have Charm by Clairo. I'm just now realizing that this top 10 list is so funny so far. If you've like never seen me before or don't know me in real life. I'm only 3 albums in and I already look like a lesbian. Now, believe it or not, I had actually never listened to a Clairo song prior to this year. I had never listened to a lot of artists prior to this year. I really got into music this year, but Clairo especially, I did not know she knew ball like that. So, whenever Charm came out and people were absolutely losing their minds, being like, oh my goodness, this is the best music I've ever heard in my entire life, I had to tap in and see what all the hype was about, and I can very confidently say it was deserved. Clairo composed this entire album. In my mind, it's almost like you're writing in a diary or journaling throughout this entire thing. Like almost daydreaming in a sense. The majority of the album is these sunny, upbeat melodies that she puts together where she talks about how she wants to be loved and appreciated by someone on a lot of these songs. Even just going back to the title of the album, how she wants to charm someone. I think the way she put this album together does it such a great service, if that's the right expression. On songs like Sexy to Someone, Terrapin, and Juna, I think it just really like puts together that whole daydreaming idea. I also think the way Clairo sings on this album, it almost feels like voices in your head. The way on a majority of these songs, she's like layering her vocals so there's like 2 Clairos singing at the same time. It really does feel like you're daydreaming. And I think that's really cool. I love when albums push a narrative that they don't say explicitly, ones that you kind of have to put together yourself, because they allow you to interpret it in whatever way you want. This is how I interpreted the album. You may have interpreted the album completely differently, and I think that is beautiful. But I feel very comfortable with Charm at 8. I think it did such a great job at what it was trying to accomplish, and it became super, super popular. But we are going to move on to number 7. Cold Visions by Blade. Now, Cold Visions was a completely surprise release. Blade had already dropped an album this year with Young Lean called Psychos, which is also a very good project. I think it got a little more hate than it deserved. But everyone kind of already thought that they got their Blade fix for this year. And then randomly he dropped an album entirely produced by Filthy. Where Psychos was like this really poetic album over these melodic beats, Cold Visions was just trap. And if you are unaware, Blade is really good at rapping over trap beats, at least in my opinion. My favorite Blade album is Red Light, and I think Cold Visions is so like reminiscent of the parts of Red Light that I love. Blade gets super into his bag on songs like Paranoia Intro, River Flows in You, 1 Second. I could go on. That wasn't a song, I'm just saying I could list more. My bad. But also is able to get like really personal and sad on the song Flatline. Blade is such a talented rapper, and I think what he had been missing for the past like year-ish is really good beats to rap over. And I think that this album gave him that, and he did so well with it. It was such an awesome release. I think the fact that it was a surprise album made it even better, but it was incredible. I absolutely loved that album. And I think the fact that it's at number 7 on this list just speaks to how crazy this year was. But now moving on, we have number 6, Coyote You're My Star by Dana and Alden. I think this one will probably be my most wild card pick on this entire list. If you don't know, Dana and Alden is a jazz group from Oregon, but become increasingly popular over the last few years, especially after COVID. So it was no surprise that I was gonna absolutely love this album. It's so good. It's a mostly instrumental album that combines elements of jazz from all over the world, from all different points in time, into this big melting pot. Like the song Ivan's Theme that was inspired by old Italian films. Or songs like the title track that's literally just inspired by the sound of howling coyotes. This album is so good. Now, if you're a longtime fan of this channel, you know that like my third or fourth video was actually like a detailed recap at Dan and Alden's entire existence. And because of that video, I not only got to go to their tour, look how cool this hat is, but I got to meet the entire band. Every single person in that group is so nice and so talented, and they all complement each other's style so well that just makes this album so much more cohesive and just beautiful. Such a great album. That was definitely one of my favorite memories of the year, and no, this is not a biased pick. Such a great album, definitely one of my favorite memories of the year, but we gotta move on. Crossing the halfway point, we are at the last 5 albums on this list. This is where the list kind of gets fuzzy. In my opinion, I can kind of move these albums around on this list and not much would change. There's like 1 or 2 albums that I would lock in place, but these are pretty fluid. So without any more yapping, number 5 is Bright Future by Adrianne Lenker. Adrianne Lenker is, in my opinion, one of the greatest songwriters of all time. She is able to create these narratives in her song that are just absolutely insane. They can make you want to get up, dance, celebrate, or they can absolutely shatter your heart. I remember when I first listened to this album, I had just gotten out of class and I was driving home. And I put that album on because it had came out that day. And the first song on that album is about like putting down the family dog. And I'm just driving home and I'm like, what? She crafts these songs in such a way that you feel like you're the one experiencing this, which is amazing. On top of that, it also helps that in my opinion, she's also one of the most talented guitarists of all time. The way she's able to change the tuning of her guitar and just shred, but like in an acoustic way, is so cool. If you still don't know what I'm talking about, there is a video of her, I believe she posts on Instagram, of her playing her song Fool from that album. Just watch how she plays the guitar. It's so crazy. I also got the opportunity to see her live this year, and just, again, seeing these songs being played in person is just such a different experience. If songs like Sadness is a Gift, where she's talking about how feeling sad about something in itself is a gift. For lack of a better term. Loving someone enough to be sad when you're not with them or seeing them is a gift. That is such a gift. To songs like No Machine, where she talks about how nothing built by any kind of industrial progress is gonna break the bonds she has with the people around her. It is such a good album, and in my opinion, it's like the 3rd best Adrianne Lenker album, which is crazy because it's beautiful. But I love Bright Future so much. I love Adrianne so much. If you haven't listened to this album, please do. It's awesome. And it's 5 on this list. This year was crazy. Moving on, at number 4, I have Pinball by Mike and Tony Seltzer. Literally, my last video was about Mike, and I talked about pinball a little more in depth. So if you want to go hear more about that, go check it. It'll be like here. But I love Pinball so much. It was a surprise release, I'm pretty sure. Mike dropped a lead single for the album R&B on Valentine's Day of this year, and then dropped the album like a month later. But this album kind of showed a side of Mike that we hadn't really seen before, and that was him on these really upbeat, bubbly trap beats. The previous album we had heard from Mike, Burning Desire, talked a lot about his struggles and what he had come from, and how he got out of it and accomplished what he did. And this album, in my opinion, is the aftermath of that. He's enjoying what he's accomplished, he's flexing, he's having a good time. I think he adapted his style of rap so well to Tony Seltzer's production that it just proves how versatile of an artist Mike is, which I did talk about in my other video. You have songs like R&B, Skur, Lethal Weapon, just so many good ones on here. Mike, if you're watching this is the 2nd time I've talked about you on this channel. Let me interview you next year, please. I love that album to death. I play it a lot at work when I need to like lock in and actually do stuff. It makes me so happy. But yeah, Mike's ability to have a super in-depth rap game with Tony Seltzer's super bubbly production, absolute staple of this year. All right, now we're getting into my top 3. These are my absolute favorite albums of this year. So let's get into it. At number 3, I have Scrapyard by Quedeca. Now, Quedeca had always been an artist I knew of in the back of my mind. I knew that he existed and I knew that he made music, but I never really paid attention to him until Scrapyard released. I never listened to any of the singles he had released before that or any of like the different parts of Scrapyard. So color me surprised when I finally decided to listen to this album, and it's like one of the greatest things I heard this year. I don't even know like what genre to classify this album in. It's so just insane. It's so different from anything I heard this year, and I think that just proves at how like weird of a producer Quadeca is, but how he makes it work. He's able to keep his production ambient and grainy while also having it pop in your face when it needs to. But he doesn't just rap on this album, he sings and plays guitar too. My two favorite songs on this album are Easier and Texas Blue, and those are two completely different songs. Easier is this low-key, heartfelt song over a guitar melody, and Texas Blue is this upbeat ballad with Kevin Abstract. This album completely cemented how versatile Quadeca is as not only a producer, but just as an artist in general, showing that he can have all these songs with completely different sounds and styles and still make a cohesive album out of them. And not only is it cohesive, it's amazing. So yeah, go listen to Scrapyard, man. That's crazy. Alright, now at my number 2 spot, I have 2 Star in the Dream Police by McGee. If you're not aware, my most viewed video on this channel is actually about McGee and this album, and it has like almost 10K views, which thank you so much, first off. But what I touched on in that video is that with this album, McGee is kind of bringing back this like skillful, almost math rock vibe to the mainstream. 2 Star in the Dream Police sounds like an album that was made in the 80s if you watched it on a VHS tape and it didn't actually exist. If you know what I mean. It almost like feels like you're in a nightmare. It almost feels like you're in a dream or a nightmare listening to a lot of this album. A lot of the production is floaty, it's cloudy, it's super grainy, feeling like it's old but not really real. It's like in your head almost. But like he also puts these really jarring like loud noises and weird sounds in this album like all throughout that kind of make it seem scary. But I think McGee is just so good at crafting these really interesting and thought out guitar melodies that I have not been able to stop listening to. The song How Many Miles off of that album, legit, I don't think I've gone a day without listening to it since I've listened to that album. That's how good that song is. And you can call me a bandwagon or whatever, I don't care. This album is great. But like I said, you have songs like How Many Miles, you have the one that everyone is listening to, Are You Looking Up? But I mean, you also have Candy, Dream Police, DNM, and all of these crazy songs that McGee has successfully been able to push out of the boundaries of what the mainstream has known of like rock and jazz it up with all these weird tones and sound effects and experimental production to the point where like everybody is trying to copy his tone now. I can't scroll 5 TikToks without seeing someone trying to copy that thing. But I really think 2 Star in the Dream Police is such a beautiful, beautiful album, and I still don't know how McGee was ever able to come up with stuff like that. And low-key, it was a very tight battle between this album and the one I'm about to talk about for the number 1 spot, but I think the number 1 deserves it. At number 1, and I'm sure before you even clicked on the video, you could probably guess what I'm about to say. I have I Lay Down My Life For You by JPEG Mafia. Surprise, surprise. Similar to what I was talking about with Tyler, JPEG Mafia has created a sound for himself that people have come to recognize, but has also been able to experiment far beyond that sound and still tie it to his original sound, that he's able to create so many good songs. We've come to expect his loud 808s, his bass, and his super in-your-face crashy drum patterns. But what he brought a lot of into this album is inspirations from rock and punk and metal, and I think that's so cool. From even like the opening song, you have this really like in-your-face loud guitar melody. Moving into one of the lead singles, Sin Miedo, you have this dude shredding in between these breaks of just in-your-face. He was able to collaborate with super cool artists like Vince Staples and Denzel Curry and create these really, really great songs that kind of combine both of their styles. But my favorite thing he was able to do with his album happened on the song Either On or Off the Drugs. And it's a song I have talked about so much. You're probably tired of it. In the middle of this crazy in-your-face punk-inspired album, Either On or Off the Drugs stops you in your tracks and serenades you with this awesome beat, sampling an AI cover of a Future song and making just this really slow melodic rap ballad about how either on or off the drugs, Peggy is the same person. It's just so beautiful, and I think the fact that it came at such like a jarring time on the album where you really didn't expect it is so beautiful. My second video on this channel was actually breaking down the sample of this song. That's how much I love this thing. But as a whole, this album has just combined everything I love about Peggy, but added so many new elements that I just can't get enough of it. Songs like I'll Be Right There or Vulgar Display of Power, where you have these like almost like whimsical sounding synths in the background, to songs like New Black History and JPEG Ultra, where it's in your face, they're yelling at you, and they're having a great time. This album is absolutely beautiful. It is the craziest piece of music I've listened to this year, and in my opinion, I believe it completely deserves the #1 spot. In my opinion. And with that being said, that is the top 10 albums for Henry Loves Music in 2024. So, what did y'all think of my list? Did I do good? It's okay if you don't think I did. I think I did. If your favorite album wasn't on here, let me know what I missed. I did not listen to every single album this year, and I still have a lot more that I want to listen to. And if this list offended you so much and you think that I should never listen to music again, please, by all means, leave a comment. This video is just the beginning of the end of the year. That made no sense, but I'm keeping it in. Next week, I'll drop my top 10 songs video, and in my opinion, I'm a lot more excited about that one because a lot of my favorite songs came from projects that either weren't albums or were just singles from some smaller artists. So please, if you like small artists and you need more music to listen to, be on the lookout for that. But with all that being said, thank you for watching. I really appreciate it. I'll kind of get more sappy in the next video talking about how crazy the growth has been on this channel this year, but that's gonna do it for today. Goodbye.